Welcome to another PewTube. I'm Kevin Inoue with Fight Designer LLC. Coming to you from Eugene, Oregon, where I'm still kind of unpacking and getting things set up. What prompts this video? I've had a number of videos already on things around replica shotguns and the sounds they make when racking, on shell-ejecting airsoft, on the PPS and APS shotguns, on using airsoft gas revolvers to create a little puff of smoke and things like that. We used that effect on Clue and some other things. But putting them together, what happened was I recently got some new airsoft gas shells. And a couple things I want to mention here. First of all, and this is, I think, worth mentioning, especially post-rust, the reminder that we shouldn't have all needed. So what I got was I got some supposed prop replica gas airsoft shotgun rounds. And mixed in with the, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with the 8 or so gas shotgun shells that I got for this Tanaka Works and PPS shotguns, were 4 real shotgun shells. So these came from someone who had not been using it for airsoft. They didn't know how they worked, where to load the gas, anything like that. I think they've been using them as movie props. And quite obviously, apparently using real, live, unfired 12-gauge shotgun shells as ways to accessorize the shotguns. So, you know, it's fairly common with prop shotguns to have things like this, where you've got like a side saddle, or to have sort of a bandolier shell holder on the strap, something like that holds extra shells. And it's a great way to you know, because shotguns, you have to reload fairly often. They don't hold a whole lot. It's not like an assault rifle where you've got a 30-round magazine or more. In this case, you've got, like 4 or 5 rounds before you have to reload. So it can be great to have some there that are quick and ready to go, that you can pull out and, you know, on the move, load either in the chamber or in the tube magazine. So again, that was just 3 rounds. So it's not like a handgun where you can just pop in a new magazine and have, you know, 15 or more rounds ready all at once. It is a little bit more work with a pump action shotgun. And so that means that you have a lot more of these visible as sort of set dressing, but do not use live rounds. Live ammunition, and I can't believe I still have to say this, live ammunition does not belong on a film set. Period. Now, I hate using terms like never, because yes, there are always exceptions. If your Union television set happens to be, you know, Mythbusters, and you're doing a myth-busting thing about how much a shotgun round versus a rifle round will penetrate sheet wall, or whether or not it'll, like, the velocity will die off in water right away if you can fire a gun underwater. Like, Mythbusters has done some of these things. Sure. Yeah, is this thing actually bulletproof? Sure, yeah, Mythbusters, shows like that, reality shows, they may want to fire a live round into ballistic gel and talk about what happens. But if you're doing narrative storytelling and you have fake guns, or real guns that are firing blanks, or being loaded with dummy rounds, no live ammo. Just don't do it. Don't. And these were not the, like, Rattler rounds where you could tell if you shake them that it's not live. These were not fired off primers. These were live shotgun rounds. And they also got mailed through USPS, which also is technically illegal without that whole ORMD sticker and the licensing and all that. So broke a couple laws, definitely broke eBay's selling guidelines, selling live ammunition. But, you know, I guess they didn't know or didn't think about it. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. So to the shells themselves, this is interesting because these are a different type than what I've done before, what I've seen before with my APS and PPS shell-ejecting shotguns. Or I also have some of the Maruzen. I didn't really like the Maruzen. If nothing else, the only rounds I could get were blue, and that's kind of a designated non-gun or non-lethal ordnance color, which as a prop is not as useful. You can get other colors, I've discovered, but you got to order them from Asia and pay $40 shipping for a pack of shells and stuff, so I haven't done it yet. But Tanaka and PPS use the same kind of shells. So these will work in some of the prompts that I already have, as well as this Tanaka one here that I just showed. But there's different versions out there. So some of these shotgun props, the gas goes in a reservoir in the prop itself, and the shell is just a pass-through. In those, the shell is cheaper, right? But if something goes wrong with the gas system in the shotgun, it's a pain in the butt and more expensive to fix. In these, the gas is stored in the shells, similar to the later gen APS and things. So the shotgun itself, all that does is kind of push the little release valve. So fortunately, less things that can go wrong with the expensive prop itself. And if something does break, it's just the shell and you can replace the shell. Unfortunately, though, that also means the shells are more expensive because they're a more complicated system. And so getting enough shells to be able to cycle through and they're getting dropped on the floor at all, that can get a little pricey. So there's a trade-off. The ones I've seen before, you load generally in the back. These are a little different. These, let me show you, have sort of a pull-apart shell with the gas loading valve on the front. And the back is just the little piston thing that it pushes in. And when it pushes that in, it releases the gas until you line it back up and let it come back out. So where the primer would go, it looks a little bit less obviously like a gas airsoft prop. It looks a little bit more like real primer. So for props use, that's kind of cool. And you've got these two O-rings to try and keep the thing in place. And you know, this is actually the way it came. It had some BBs in it already, which also, for props use, you should never have it loaded with BBs. That's just a basic safety thing. Plus, this just screams airsoft. Why would you do that? Don't bring BBs to your movie set. Anyway, so yeah, it's a two-part shell. And you can get, apparently, also different casings for it. So there were two different kinds that came that were the actual airsoft shells and not the live shotgun rounds. The black ones are kind of more standard and have the little hole for the BB in the end. But these white ones were kind of puzzling to me. I hadn't seen this before. It's like, this looks like a shotgun slug or a solid wad, or what is that? And you know, it took me a while to figure this out because, again, there's also no visible valve. What it is, this is basically the airsoft version of a shotgun slug. So you've got these little black plastic bits here that are sort of the replica of the 12-gauge slug that just stick in the front end of that round. I haven't tried firing these yet. I probably could. The valves are leaking a little bit, but that's interesting. Like, I don't think you could legally use that in most airsoft tournaments. So I'm not sure what the intended use for this is, that it's firing and it's firing a larger plastic bit. So that's kind of interesting. But it got me also intrigued because what I've done with some of the CO2 revolvers before, for example, is load up the shells. Let me grab one here to show you. Some of them I haven't decommissioned specifically because I wanted to use these shells that were meant to hold BBs. And I would pack a little bit of what we ended up using for Clue was organic arrowroot powder because it's non-carcinogenic and not allergenic. And we'd pack a little bit of that in there, and you got to have a little something to hold it in. But then when you fire the CO2 out of that, and this is not loaded, but when you get that little puff of CO2, you get a little smoke effect, a little puff of smoke, which is kind of cool. And so they can sync that up with a sound cue and get something that is pretty darn safe, but has at least some sort of a visual. It's not exactly muzzle flash, but some sort of a visual that helps audiences' brains connect the sound cue to the prop itself and the action that's happening. So you just got to carefully sync things up. But it was kind of cool. Let me try a couple of different things. I mean, it's about the right size for, like, when you break apart styrofoam into its individual little beads, you can kind of pack one of those in on each side, and then sometimes I'd Sharpie it dark color so it showed up a little bit less when it went flying. You can use paper, some people have used cotton. There's other ways you can kind of hold it in. I haven't seen a perfect system. What I'd love to see someone make is replica shells like this, or a system here where you could maybe put, I don't know, maybe like lightweight plastic wrap or something over the end and have it like a little screw-on thing, like a ball jar top that would hold that on so that the pressure could then blow through it. So it would hold the powder without leaking. If you had to carry that prop around on stage for a while first and wave it around and not have it like leaking powder as you do, but then when it's fired, it would be enough to push through that and get that little puff of smoke. So I would love to see something like that, and I just haven't figured that out yet myself for how to do that. When I've tried 3D printing these shells, the rim is never strong enough and they eventually break. So there's probably some other way to do that. I just haven't figured it out yet. But if anyone out there is mechanically inclined and wants to figure it out, now you have a mission. But these shotgun shells are basically the same thing on a larger scale. So the ones that hold the BBs, it's the exact same hole through the middle. It's still a 6mm little tube, can hold powder. Same thing as the revolver shells. But when I saw these, I was like, ooh, that's a much bigger hole. I could put a lot more powder in there. Now, it's debatable whether more is necessarily better, but it got me intrigued enough to do a little bit more testing. So what I want to share today is a little bit of powder effect testing with these shotgun shells, the green gas airsoft shotgun shells, shooting a little bit of white powder or black powder. Not black powder like pyrotechnic goes boom black powder, but in this case, graphite powder. Still leaking a bit. So I'm going to try something a little bit different for the next test. Actually, a couple of things different, probably just because it's what I have in my shop. I'm going to try some of this lightweight foam stuff instead of paper. See if that maybe does a slightly better job of stopping things up. But the other one is, and this is partly a color decision of just like what might show up well in your shot and how it's lit, but also partly a props maintenance thing and thinking about how flour gunks things up. Like flour plus liquid becomes paste, becomes dough. And that's not something I want to have to clean out of all the working bits of my prop. I don't see that going well. And a lot of the ways that we clean it often involve adding oil. And if you add oil to flour, you're just going to get even nastier dough. But it occurred to me, the other thing I've got is graphene powder. And I've been using this as a sort of a color finish to get a shinier effect on over top of paint. It's basically a version like, you know, when you were a kid and you took your pencil and you rubbed it on the paper a lot, you get that kind of silvery metallic finish. You know, dark gunmetal, I guess, more like. It's a lot like that, but what I'm doing is the other reason that sometimes people buy this stuff is as a lubricant. And I know this from when a kid was in Scouts. Boy Scouts will sometimes put graphene powder on the wheels of their boxcars for boxcar derbies. So this is a black powder now. So it'll give it a different color. But I was also thinking about the PFI smoke cap suppressors that I have some of for airsoft. They had refillable things that had some sort of black powder, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's this same stuff. So it'll be a different color, but also, instead of gunking things up, it might actually even help lubricate them. Instead of having flour stuck in my prop after each use, I'll have some graphene powder. So you can see it looks like I've been working with pencils a lot, because that's basically what this is. So let's see how this does as a visual effect and as a smoke cloud thing in these gas shell-ejecting shotguns. Not sure how well I have that shoved in there. We'll see. All right, round is chambered. Here we go. Oh, I'm going to take it off cinematic mode so it'll focus on the prop and not my face. Yeah, I can see that graphene powder in there, and it is indeed getting on things. But in that, it looks kind of like the residue of shot. So there you go. You know, if I'm gonna really dial this in for a movie or a play, I've got a little more work to do. That was just initial experiments, and yeah, there's still some residue and some cleanup I need to do post that. But it's interesting. I don't think the foam worked as well. I think this lightweight foam stuff was much more visible when it flew out, both because it flies more slowly and it's just a little bit brighter. And the paper one, I just used like newspaper from a sales flyer thing I got in the mail, some junk mail. It actually ripped through, and so at least on some of those, the paper stayed mostly in the shell, which is perfect. So it contained the powder a little bit, and then it blasted through, and it was still in the shell. So I didn't have to see that wadding go flying or anything. It was safe, it was contained, but it did its job of holding the powder in, mostly, until it was ready to fire. So that's probably the direction I would keep going with that, is finding some way to have powder or plastic or something that could stay contained. You know, the ones that hold the BB, honestly, this would hold plenty of powder. I think some of the ones with the big opening, it was just too much powder, too much stuff. Which is just as well, because honestly, those are probably going to be hard to find going forward. These were on eBay. I'm not sure they even still make them. And this is probably sufficient to hold plenty of powder to be able to get that effect. So then it's just about, you know, is there a good way? There's that little groove there. I wonder if I could even like pack an O-ring in there and like squeeze the O-ring and use that to maybe hold some plastic. But really, ideally, it would hold it in on both ends. So on the outside so it doesn't spill out, but also on the back end so that it doesn't completely gunk up my gas valve, because I don't have to be cleaning these constantly either. So ideally there'd be something on both ends, but yeah, I don't know. You know, maybe even just a little bit of cling wrap or something over here, and then a little bit with an O-ring there. That might be my next thing to try. If I can find an O-ring that slides in there nicely enough. It does give me a little more real estate to work with than these revolver shells, just because there's just not much room here to hold anything. I mean, I could certainly grind a groove in that if I needed to, but I don't know. We'll see. So it does seem like this is something there's interest in, because it can work for live theater and it can work for movies. The other thought I had was, you know, this is probably a little bit too small, but a 12 gauge shotgun barrel is almost wide enough to fit one of those airsoft muzzle flash simulating tracer units, like I reviewed in a previous PewTube video. The thing about those, and why I haven't used them yet, is I haven't figured out how to make it not dependent on the BB going through it to set off the motion detector to initiate the flash. But if there's a little bit of powder like this going through, that's probably enough to trigger that flash unit to go off. And if there was a way that I could fit one of those in the barrel here, if it was small enough to fit in the barrel, that could be a great effect, to have the combination of the haze of a little bit of powder and the light of one of those LED tracer unit kind of things going in there. That might look really nice, but again, it's not quite small enough, and I don't know that I have the time or the electronic skill to put that together entirely on my own. But if anybody else out there is bored and interested, there's another project for you. Between the white powder and the graphene black powder, I think honestly it just depends on what your set looks like. You know, are we talking about a daytime shoot? We're talking about a nighttime shoot. Is there hard light coming in from an angle and like fog machines and stuff? Or is there soft light and it's all kind of dissipated? Is the background wall dark? Is the background wall light? Or is there just kind of lots of space behind? It's really just what's going to show. I will say I really love that kind of creeping effect of the residual dark smoke from the graphene. But, you know, the answer, as with so many things, is it depends. And, well, we'll keep working on it. So, whatever the challenges are in your life, keep working on it. And I hope it goes well. I'm working on mine, and we'll see where they go. So, in summary, more is not always better. Some of that was just way too much, obviously. I still need to solve the problem of how to hold stuff in so that the powder doesn't come out as soon as you chamber it around or just wave it around. So I'm still trying to figure out a good answer to that, but I do think that some of this could be an effective effect, especially in conjunction with something like one of the airsoft muzzle flash devices. I've been able to get one that's just got loose leads so I can make my own switch, but I'll have to figure out then, like, what am I building the switch into to trigger that? What's the best way to sync that up with something and attach it to something? So we'll see. And a lot of this is just going to depend on how much time and, frankly, inspiration I have. So you may have noticed I'm not in that fancy green screen setup, not fancy, cheap-ass green screen setup that I used to have in Ohio. I don't have that space anymore. I don't have a good film space, you know, I have a day job, and I'm lucky to have it. This is my office now. I have an office. This is good, but it's not in theater or film. So this work on props and violence design and any of the performance and choreography stuff, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out who I am now and what I can do and what's useful and what's not. And it's been a struggle to keep the motivation for things like this going. Sometimes I'll talk to someone, they'll be like, oh yeah, I love your videos, it's been useful, but rarely do I actually get to hear that. And there's usually not a lot posted in response unless it's a product review, in which case people want info on the product. But I don't get sponsorships for those, so I don't also feel like I can keep spending money to get cool new toys just to shout into the void about them. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing these or not. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you got ideas, if you got anything that you think might inspire me, or get me going, or a project you want help with that can be done on evenings and weekends. So that's just kind of the state of where we are. I had this footage that I shot actually a couple of weeks ago and just haven't done anything with yet. So I'm trying to finish that off and at least tie up the loose ends. But yeah, I don't know, folks. But you know, until the next time I get to say it, stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy, look good doing it if you can. And this is Kevin away from Fight Designer LLC.